I want to sell a firearm, right, what do I do? Do I have to be an FFL? What's involved in that?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty nuanced question. As a general rule, in order for a person to physically dispossess themselves of a firearm and give it to somebody else, that is going to have to go through an FFL, a Federal Firearms Licensee. Now, I say general because there are actually exemptions to that. In my state, in California, and in other states, there is something referred to as an interfamilial operation of law. We have a unique problem in California, which I'll get into in a second, but effectively, if two family members are both residents of the same state, rather than going through an FFL, there is documentation that can be filed optionally. You don't even have to do it, okay? But you can file this documentation, and that essentially moves the gun from one person to the other person, bypassing an FFL requirement. Regardless of what state you're in, if a firearm is crossing state lines, then that instantly triggers the requirement that a gun go through an FFL. Right? If Bob is living in California, wants to sell it to Charlie who lives in Nevada, it absolutely unequivocally is going to have to go through an FFL. Now, where we have a real issue in California is when we have handgun rosters. And handgun rosters effectively mandate that an FFL, a gun store in that jurisdiction, can only sell handguns that are on the roster. And California's got this exhaustive list of requirements for a gun to go on the roster. And as a result, it eliminates a lot of firearms that are generally available to people in other states, but not in California, unless the gun lives already in California. And there are ways. So for instance, if somebody lives in Arizona, buys a Mega Blaster 3000, decides to move to California, he can bring his Mega Blaster 3000 with him. Now, when he becomes a California resident, he can use an FFL and he can sell that Mega Blaster 3000 to someone who already lives. So there is a way, right, for that gun to be sold. However, and this is the biggie, under federal law, if you are buying a gun for the purposes of selling that gun, and there is a recorded profitable, potential in there, then that triggers potentially what we call a straw purchase, and you are now engaged in the business of selling a gun. And if you look at ATF's own website, they say that engaged in the business can be for as little as one firearm.
One firearm.
Yeah.